What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your TITAN SLIM D8. They're available in two different colors of black and white, but the setup for each is the exact same. Along with the sub itself, you also get a power cable to power the sub. So now let's get to know the sub a bit better by going over the controls, inputs, and outputs, which are all on the back of the sub, so I'm going to turn it around so we can see what's going on. So right off the bat, we have the power button down here to power on the sub, so I'm going to do that right now. Once you turn it on, you'll see the power indicator light up here. Next to the power indicator, we have a signal indicator to let us know whenever the sub is receiving signal. And then we also have a clip LED whenever the sub is distorted or getting too much input. On top, we have the input section here so we can connect the sub to a speaker, mixer, etc. We have two types of inputs here. So we have a combo jack input so we can plug in either an XLR or 1/4-inch cable. And then we also have an RCA input so we can plug the sub into any mixer or speaker with an RCA output. Below that, we have an XLR output, so we can also use this to expand our setup with additional subwoofers or speakers. Next to that, we have these two controls. So first we have the phase switch. If it sounds like the sub is pulling in air instead of pushing out, or if it just sounds out of sync with the rest of our setup, we can try flipping the phase with the phase switch here to try to sync it back up. And next to that, we have a 50 Hertz boost. So if we felt like we needed even more low end, we can have 50 Hertz boosted by flipping it over to boost like that. And last but not least, we have the level knob here to raise the overall volume of the sub. So you can raise it as high as you want, and this will determine the mix of the sub with everything else in your setup. Now there's a couple different ways we can have the subwoofer positioned. So we can either have it vertical just like this so that it's standing straight up. And you'll notice on the side we have these feet here. So if we wanted, we can lay the subwoofer horizontally like this. Now if you have the subwoofer horizontal, you'll notice these grooves here on the corners, and this is so we can stack another TITAN SLIM D8 on top. So for example, I have a second sub right here. So all I have to do is line up the feet of the second sub up to the grooves of the bottom sub, just like this. After you've placed the second sub on top, you can connect the subs together through the XLR inputs and outputs, and we're gonna go over how exactly to do that later on. You'll also notice this 35mm ND pole mount socket here on the top, so we can take any 35mm pole with the M20 threading on the bottom, place it in just like this, and screw it in to secure the pole. From there, we can take a speaker like our Titan 1 Pro and place it on top of the pole, just like this. And now we have an array system ready to go. When you set up the speaker vertically, you'll notice another pole mount socket. So again, we can take a 35mm pole, line up the M20 threading to the threading inside of the socket like this, screw the pole in to secure it to the sub, then line up your speaker to the top of the pole, and now you're all set. Now, if you take a look on the grill, you'll see the Rockville logo here. And the cool thing is we can actually flip this around depending on the position of the sub. So for example, if we have the sub set up vertically like this, we can just go to the logo here and then just turn it so that the shield is facing vertically like this. Or if we have the sub set up horizontally, we can do the same thing and turn it so that the shield is facing like this. Now, one way we can set up our subwoofer is with a powered speaker like the Titan 1 Pro, which is a perfect combination, but if you have another powered speaker, you can follow the same steps. The powered speaker is going to be our main source of music, so we're going to connect from the speaker into the subwoofer, but if you were trying to do this setup with a mixer, you'll actually want to connect out of the mixer into the sub and then the speaker. Just wanted to point that out, but we'll be going over that later on. So to connect the speaker to the subwoofer, I'm going to take an XLR cable. I'm going to plug the female end into the XLR output on my speaker. Then I'm going to plug the male end into the XLR input on the sub. So now I'm going to go ahead and power on the speaker, and then I'll power on the sub. Now on some powered speakers, there is a crossover or a high pass filter you can set so all of the high to mid frequencies come out of the speaker while all of the low end comes out of the sub. On the Titan One Pro, we can activate the high pass filter by going to the DSP section here. We're gonna click on the DSP mode button for the next setting, which is the external sub mode, which will activate the high pass filter on the speaker. Now I can raise the volume on the subwoofer, and don't forget you can use the other functions on the sub like the 50 Hertz boost or the phase switch. You can use these controls depending on the setup. So for example, if you feel like the subwoofer is out of sync with your speaker, you can try flipping the phase with the phase switch. Or if you just need some additional low end, you can use the 50 Hertz boost. So now I'm gonna connect my phone so we can play some music and hear how it sounds. Oh yeah, sounds really good. You really hear that extra low end. Another way we can set up our subs is by connecting two together from our main speaker. So the first thing we'll do is connect our speaker to our first sub. For that, I'm going to take one XLR cable. I'm gonna plug the female end into the line output here on the speaker. Then I'm gonna plug the other end into the line input on the first sub. Now the next thing we're gonna do is link the first subwoofer into the second subwoofer. So I'm gonna take another XLR cable. I'm gonna plug the female end into the line output on the first sub. Then I'm gonna plug the other end into the line input on the second sub. So now I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my speaker. And then I'll turn on both of my subwoofers. Now, if possible, we recommend setting a high pass filter or a crossover on your main speaker. So for instance, we are using the Titan One Pro, and we can set a high pass filter by going to the DSP section here. Then we'll click on the DSP mode button here until we get to the external sub setting. Next thing we're gonna want to do is set up the volume on both of our subs. And don't forget you can use the other settings on the sub that include the phase switch and the 50 Hertz boost. So if you feel like one or both of your subwoofers are out of sync with the whole setup, we recommend flipping the phase by using the phase switch. Or if you need any additional bass coming out of one or both subs, you can always use the 50 Hertz boost. So now to test my setup, I'm going to connect my phone to my main speaker and play some music. So let's hear how it sounds. Now, if you're trying to use this setup with a mixer, we actually recommend that you plug from out of the mixer into the subwoofers first and then to the main speaker. But we're gonna go over this in just a second. So another thing I wanted to show you guys is how to set up your subwoofers along with your speakers to a mixer. For today's setup, we're using the Rock Mix 8 that has 1/4 inch outputs, but you can follow similar steps if your mixer has XLR outputs. So the first thing I'm gonna do is plug from the outputs of the mixer into the inputs of the sub. So for that, again, I'm gonna use 1/4 inch cables. I'm gonna plug one end of my cables into the main outputs here on the mixer. Then I'm gonna plug the other ends into the line inputs on the subs. Again, if you're using XLR cables, you're just gonna plug the male ends into the line inputs. So now our mixer is all set to the subwoofers. The next thing we're gonna want to do is connect the subwoofers to the speakers. So I'm gonna take two more XLR cables. I'm gonna plug the female ends into the line outputs of the subs. Then I can plug the other ends into one of the channels on each speaker. And for today, I'm gonna use channel 1. So now I can go ahead and turn everything on, starting with the mixer. Then I can turn on the speakers, and then I can turn on the subs. Next thing I can do is raise the volume on the subwoofers. Remember, you also have the option to use the phase switch and the 50 Hertz boost. So if you feel like the subwoofers are out of phase with the rest of the setup, you can try flipping the phase using the switch. And if you feel like you need even more low end, you can always use the 50 Hertz boost. If there's a crossover or a high pass filter, you're gonna want to set that on your speakers. Again, for the Titan One Pros, you can do this through the DSP and switch it to external sub mode. And then you're gonna use the level knob on the channels you're using. And now to hear everything coming out of the mixer, you can raise the main mix knob. And now you have a great live sound setup so you can plug in instruments or microphones into the mixer and have everything coming out of the speakers and subs. To test our setup, I'm just going to connect my phone to the mixer through Bluetooth so we can hear how everything sounds together. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your TITAN SLIM D8s. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.